talk about psychedelics in a way. I was like, man, I remember eating mushrooms. I never experienced any of this stuff. So I'd be at a party, smoking a joint, drinking some beer, and like having some mushrooms. I never used them intentionally.
Mm.
And so, within a couple of days of watching videos, something was calling. I heard about ayahuasca the first time, and immediately this like beacon goes off. It's like, yes, there's something here for you. Go, like, find it, find it, find it.
Mm. How old are
And
you
so
at this
I
point?
started. I am probably, this was 2012, so I'm 30 years old.
Mm. Cool.
2012, 30 years old. And I contact Rick Strassman, who was did the DMT molecule, and he was like, "Yeah, there's like," I was like, "Yeah, can I do a DMT study or something? Like, I'm curious." He's like, um, "No, there's nothing going on, but go check out this place. It's ayahuasca. It's safe there, and I know the guys who run the place." I'm like, "Okay." So I tell my wife, I'm like, "Hey, babe, I have to go to Brazil to drink some magical tea that's gonna make me hallucinate and vomit and shit my pants in the jungle. What do you think?" She's like, "Are you crazy?" So it took me a lot of negotiating, but she saw like how badly I wanted to go and kind of like where I was at, and so I went. And after that first cup of ayahuasca, like my life changed, and I died. I had a death experience, and it was very humbling because Mr. Know It All, although he realized he didn't know everything, because obviously, I made a lot of mistakes in my life, but like in this moment, it was like, yeah, almost nothing compared to the vastness of the universe and reality and consciousness. Like you're like, like a speck in this
Mm.
kind of vast sea. And I was starting from scratch again, and it just led me on this journey of like being like humble and being open and just trying to learn. And so, spending time in nature, drinking plant medicine, mushroom journeys, 5-MeO DMT, and I started looking for other people because like when I came back from that, like I'm like, everyone's got to do ayahuasca. Like I found something, like, man, and they looked at me like I had three heads, and I was just like, guys, got to try this. Like, we're okay. And so after I learned to kind of shut up a bit about that, I decided to make a documentary about plant medicine. It's called Psyched Out. You can watch it on YouTube or
YouTube
on
channel.
Amazon TV or on Gaia.
Cool.
And it was a wild experience making that, like the synchronicity and the things that happened, like blow my mind. Um, I can share a quick story.
Yeah.
So I volunteered to work at this website at the time because I was just looking for people that were in a similar wavelength, and they were talking about like spirituality, conspiracy, health, like all the kind of stuff that was going on that time, probably like 2015, 2014. And and so I decided to do this documentary because everyone I talked to, trying to convince them about ayahuasca and telling stories and facts and scientific studies and history, and like I got enough like to make a documentary. I've never made any movies before or anything like that. So I start interviewing people, and I get connected with Gabor Mate, and I fly out to Vancouver to meet with him and interview him. And Dennis McKenna, I got to interview him as well, and Rick Doblin from Maps, all these like heroes of mine that are like, OGs in the space. I'm meeting all these guys and creating a documentary.
Cool.
And Gabor Mate he's like, okay, there's two people you should try to interview, like as people who have transformed their lives through plant medicine. This girl, Lisa from Toronto, she was an 18-year heroin addict, and she has a crazy story. And you got to talk to her. And this other one, her name is Myung, and she's in Boston. And I'm like, wow, this is self-funded. I don't really have a budget. Like, I barely got out here, but I'm gonna look up Lisa in Toronto. But Myung, like, I don't think maybe for part two.
Yeah.
So another guy that I interviewed was Dave, and he studied with the Shipibo for like 15 years down in Peru.
Mhm.
And I had done this amazing interview with him, and it went perfect. And he was just so well spoken and talked about the medicine from his perspective and his journey. And I got Lisa from Toronto. She had a great story too. So these guys are all in the documentary if you ever end up watching it. And I'm going to
I skimmed
edit.
through it earlier, and I'll also put it in the show notes so anyone that's
Oh,
curious can
cool.
check it out through there. Yeah.
So I'm going to edit, and I get to Dave, who's the shaman. I get to his footage, and it's all corrupted. And I'm just like, damn, man, like this guy would come to Ontario like every once in a while, like very randomly. And I'm like, I needed that interview, and I'm like, man, this is crazy. So I email him just to see like when he's coming back in. Like it's a long shot. But I'm like, okay, I'm gonna email him. This guy doesn't have like a cell phone, and he responds right away. He's like, hey man, like perfect timing. I'm actually gonna be there this weekend. This is like Tuesday or Wednesday. And he's like, I'm gonna be there this weekend up north here. Come and we'll do the interview again. I'm like, perfect. I got no crew, no real camera. Like I had to borrow a camera from somebody. I don't know how to use it, sound, all these things. I'm just like, I'm just gonna go and figure it out. So I get up there, and it just so happens that half the people there are from the Toronto film and music industry. So like expert professionals at camera setup and all this kind of stuff. So they helped me get all set up. So I got like a perfect setup. I do the interview. It's amazing. It was even better than the first one because I asked all these other questions
Yeah.
that I thought about after that I didn't get to ask them. And after I finished the interview, I'm going back into the kitchen, I'm having a glass of water, and I'm just talking to this lady, and we're talking, and during the conversation, I kind of, look down at her hands, and they're kind of like these like deformed kind of hands, and she mentions that she's from Boston, and I'm like, your name wouldn't be Myung, would it? She's like, yeah. How did you know? I'm like, well, you're never gonna believe this, but Deborah Matthew told me I should interview you for this documentary. They have this crazy story of how you kind of like saved yourself from scleroderma with plant medicine. Like, I got my camera here. You want to be in it? She's like, absolutely. And I get goosebumps every time I tell the story. And it was like
Wow.
something happened. Like, I don't know if it's the ayahuasca or something that corrupted the footage
Yeah.
at that moment, because all these things kind of aligned, and she was one of the main stories in the documentary after. you
Wow.
know if it didn't happen exactly at that moment, at that time, exactly how it did, it wouldn't have happened, but it
Yeah.
did. And it was
Yeah.
just super wild, and things like
Wow.
that keep happening to me, where it's just like the probability is impossible, or
Yeah.
it's 100% it had to happen. Like, it's not impossible because it was only one way that it could have happened.
Yeah.
Um, and so from there, like I ended up meeting Wim Hof, and I interviewed him for a podcast I had. This is before it was like super stardom, and he invited me to go do a training with him in LA and take his the first facilitator training in North America.